The new game mode, Currency Wars, was released in the 3.7 patch of Honkai Star Rail, and because I've done nothing but play Currency Wars for the past 3 days, I know 2 things for certain. It's extremely fun, and it's unbalanced as hell. When it comes to making Star Rail content, it really does pay to be first. Naturally, this means everyone rushing to get videos out on the new game mode as fast as possible, which inevitably means basing it on the easiest difficulties, which means that at high levels, if you actually follow the advice given to you by most Star Rail content creators, you'll be hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, and flat out deceived. So I'm gonna do what Pridwin never could, actually make an accurate tier list for Honkai Star Rail. We're giving away 3 Star Rail monthly passes to the community. Subscribers who comment on this video and at least one other on the channel will have a chance to win. And I'll be reaching out to the winners in the second week of December to deliver the passes to your account. Best of luck in the giveaway, and thank you to our sponsor for making this possible, LD Shop. Gacha games are an expensive hobby, but with LD Shop, they don't have to be. LD Shop is a safe and reliable game top-up site created by LD Player Emulator, which offers unbeatable prices for Wineric shards and other in-game purchases in Honkai Star Rail, as well as Genshin Impact, Wuthering Waves, and other games. If you use the affiliate link below, you'll receive a 15 and 5% off coupon, which can save you up to $50 in Honkai Star Rail purchases. All you need is your server and game ID to top up, and if you spend over 80 USD in 1 month at LD Shop, you'll get a free supply pass. Thank you to LD Shop for sponsoring this video, and be sure to check them out using the link in the pinned comment and description. Current Currency Wars discourse suffer from both being overly simplistic and needlessly complicated at the same time. Occam's razor is a philosophical principle that's often mistranslated as the simplest explanation is usually the most accurate. This is how most people view the game mode as a whole. If a character is high rarity and or strong in the normal game, that means they must also be strong in high difficulty Currency Wars. As a result, almost every tier list online just throws basically every purple and gold rarity character into top tier, since rare must equal good, while also leaving out some of the actual strongest units in the game. They don't take into account non-recommended builds, power curves, the ridiculous scaling at highest levels, and just how much needs to go right to actually obtain a winning combination of characters. In actuality, Occam's razor states the following: the solution with the fewest assumptions is usually correct. What does this mean in Currency Wars? From the results of all my testing, what I've found is that characters in systems that are able to most reliably clear at high difficulties are the best options. So certain characters may dominate at Amethyst or below, but once you get past that, they're literally less than useless. Does Archer do a lot of damage? Sure. Will he reliably show up early enough to carry your Doom skill point run? Yeah, you've got a better chance of Huohuo lowering the HP of Forgotten Hall. Once you get to a certain difficulty, it becomes more and more clear that only a handful of teams are viable. And once you get to an even higher difficulty, it becomes abundantly clear that there are a grand total of 3. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible for a dot or break team to clear at the highest difficulty, but if you zoom out and compile enough data, there are a few clear winning strategies that statistically are stronger and infinitely more reliable and reproducible than all others. So even if in a vacuum, character A does more damage than character B, if character B is a part of a team that typically wins, while character A is a part of a team that sucks, character B is still a more valuable character. What bugs me most about the current tier list is that they base their placements on potential scenarios where everything goes perfectly, rather than an actually applicable framework based on how most Currency War runs will actually go. Alright, it's time to get into what you all clicked on this video for. The tier list is what I'll say in a few minutes once I finish talking about what everyone gets wrong about Currency Wars. See, what really bugs me most about the current tier list is that they have Aglaea sharing a tier with any other character, when objectively speaking, there isn't a character who even comes close. Most low rarity units in Currency Wars are placed low on tier lists because intuitively, that's what makes sense to do, when in actuality, the exact opposite should be true. A good character of low rarity is far better than a great character of high rarity because low rarity characters in large contribute far more value to the team by being available earlier and being better for your economy. So for a character like Aglaea, who not only has the highest contributing factor, but is also a 1-star rarity, any tier list who doesn't have her within her own tier at the very top can immediately be disregarded. Okay, now you hopefully understand what makes a character valuable in Currency Wars, why almost all high rarities are grossly overrated, and that Aglaea is the undisputed GOAT. It's time to get into what you all clicked on this video for, the tier list. With most tier lists, you start at the bottom and work your way up, but the nature of how we'll go about this really requires a top-down approach. As I subtly hinted at earlier, Aglaea is at the top in her own tier. Not only is she a 1-star rarity, not only is her team the most easily accessible, not only does she have by far the highest damage ceiling with infinite scaling, she's basically the only character who is 100% optimal even with her trial version. If there's one reason as to why only 3 teams are usable in Currency Wars, it's how speed works. Essentially, at higher levels, your DPS just doesn't get to move at all. So the fact that Aglaea is naturally fast, with a universally accepted OP build centered entirely around stacking as much speed as possible, that's what separates her from the rest of the cast, especially given just how terrible Huohuo's auto build is. If there's any downside to her, is that she's a little bit weaker early on, you rely on getting a lot of shoes, and you get massively screwed over by those spiritually Israeli TV mobs. But otherwise, she has no weaknesses whatsoever. You've seen all the wheelchair Aglaea memes. I don't really need to further explain. She's her. Moving on. In the second highest tier is Phainon and Cyrene. Phainon is an interesting case. His team is one of the 3 viable ones, but he's strictly worse than Aglaea and way harder to use. You're gonna need 3 of the spiky armor equipments, as many shielders as you can find, as many supports as you can find, including Robin with the action advance item or Cyrene with the insta-ult item, and somehow survive on some weird hybrid team setup in the early stages until you actually get him in the store. But what makes Phainon work is that he's able to essentially make enemies one-shot themselves with the stop hitting yourself setup while finishing them off with the counter, essentially bypassing the speed issue entirely. It's also annoying since you're not going to be able to use him on auto, since you need to always be countering in his ult, otherwise your DPS falls off a cliff. But watching enemies nuke themselves every action is just so funny and satisfying, it's so worth it. Cyrene, despite being a gold rarity, lands so high on the list because let's face it, this game mode is absolutely perfect for her. The insta-ult item gives her E2, she's best in slot in every one of the viable teams. I mean, once you get her, you've already won the run. Not too much to say really. If only they made her good in the base game. In the third highest tier, we have Castorice, Hyacine, Huohuo, Daniel Hangpermancer Ture, and Sunday. These are all extremely strong characters, but for different reasons. To start, Castorice, of course, is one of the strongest characters who enables the 3rd viable team in Currency Wars because she's Huohuo's most favoritist child, and they just can't not make her top tier in every game mode. She's able to get around the speed issues by nature of enemies dealing 1,000,000 damage, meaning she gets Nether Wing charge instantly. Not nearly as good as Phainon, and doesn't hold a candle to Aglaea, but if you want to have some variety, go for it. Though personally, I'm playing Currency Wars to get the heck away from Castorice. Similarly, Hyacine is so high up there since she enables Castorice and Aglaea, but she also does a freakish amount of personal damage herself. She has 2 playstyles, either hyperspeed to maximize healing, or run a sub DPS build that's basically just main DPS. Just by nature of how enemies in Currency Wars are, you'll need at least 2 fully built sustains to survive the onslaught of enemy damage, so they'll be fairly high value across the board. I'd say Huohuo is at least as strong as Hyacine, since she's an integral part of the Aglaea wheelchair comp, and potentially the Phainon comp as well, but she doesn't have quite the same individual impact. But DHPT is not too far behind either. He's absolutely essential in Phainon teams where he contributes a huge amount of damage and is a very strong second sustain in either the Aglaea team or the Castorice team, with him converting his shields to healing. Either way, in any winning run, you'll basically always have 1 or more of these 3, so take your pick. Sunday is a cornerstone for both Aglaea and Phainon, so just like in base HSR, he's a must pull. Going down 1 more tier, we got Tribbie, Yunli, Tingyun, RMC, and Cerydra. Tribbie is a solid Aglaea support, which is where most, if not all of her value comes from. Yunli is vastly overrated, and her damage is secondary to Aglaea's, but she's still on the Aglaea team, which is enough to put her in S tier. On the other hand, Cerydra is extremely underrated and versatile, being able to be slotted in basically every team comp with a corresponding badge. However, she's not an absolutely essential piece for any of the big 3 teams, so she'll stay in S tier. Tingyun and RMC are essential for Aglaea, so easy S tier as well. At A+ tier, we have Anaxa and Saber, who are both helpful for Aglaea, but since they don't directly amplify her damage, they're a lot less valuable than the other Aglaea fodders. They are a good sort of bridge unit where they carry in early to mid game, but can eventually be replaced by the likes of Yunli or Cyrene. Our next tier are the Phainon merchants: Robin, Aventurine, Gepard, and March 7th. Yes, Preservation March 7th. They're good because they make Phainon gooder, irrespective of how mid they might actually be. Obviously, Robin is the best one, but they're quite far below any of the characters in the higher tiers and do one thing and one thing only: help Phainon help the enemies hit themselves on it. Below them, you guessed it, the Castorice merchants. Evernight, Blade, Mydei, and Jingliu. They're solid and definitely will get you far enough for Castorice to show up in the shop, so points there. But ultimately, Phainon comp is stronger and far more fun. Time for the part where everyone will get mad. C tier has Welt, Yuan, Archer, Bronya, Black Swan, Topaz, and Cipher. No, I'm not rage baiting, I'm basically putting every gold rarity character in C tier. And if at this point you still don't get why, I guess you haven't really been paying attention at all. Are the gold rarities all strong individually? Yes, of course. But from a logical and statistical point of view, you are always better off trying to assemble one of the big three teams. If you get one of them early on, you can maybe shift strategies, but most of the time, that just won't work and won't translate as well late game when enemies are unkillable and move 10 times before you can move once. You can show me as many screenshots of Yuan or whoever doing 500 million damage as you want. It won't change the fact that it's a numbers game and only Aglaea, Phainon, and Castorice have it on lock. Cipher is uncharacteristically solid, despite not fitting into the other teams, since late game, she'll always have a fully charged ult ready to go. But unfortunately, her taking up a primary slot really plummets her usability. I'll give you a moment to type up the most splendid hate comment before we move on. I'm not blind to just how absurd this looks to most people, but get to a high enough difficulty, and you'll really get it. Okay, next up, all of them. Debuff team, follow-up team, quantum team, bellbog team, SP team, Lakers and 5, they're bad. I was excited as anyone else to try them, and it was cool to see characters implemented the way they actually should have been, aka Healer Jiaoqiu and Swan, but they just don't hold up at higher difficulties. And at the bottom, we've got Dot, Break, and Natasha. Keeping with recent trends, Firefly was found dead in a ditch. Everyone in this tier belongs to a team that just doesn't work in practice. Not too much else to say about them really. So that's the tier list for Currency Wars. Was it essentially a strategy tier list rather than a character tier list? Yes, it was. Is it strictly speaking a more accurate way of ranking Currency Wars characters? I certainly think that's the case. I think there's a discussion to be had about the usefulness of tier lists in general. You'll always see people with their thinking cap on, arguing how tier lists are so beneath them and that it's more important to just have fun. At lower levels, sure, you can play literally any combination of characters and have decent success. But the reality of the mode is such that after a certain point, if you value your time at all, you ought to follow the meta to succeed. That's true in Currency Wars, that's true in Star Rail as a whole, and it's true for basically any game with an actual competitive element. So if there's anything you could take away from this video, it's fuck Tectone, and you better start hoarding those boots. Thank you for watching. More Star Rail videos coming soon.
Anyway, $4 a pound.